Good afternoon and welcome to a special edition of the Gold Coats and Guns Hour here on YouTube. My name's Tom Luongo. I hope everybody's having a good day. And let's wait just a second to get a couple of people into the stream, but I did try to, try the pre-promotion thing via through Twitter. One of these days I will actually sit down. You may see some like weird short streams while I try and figure out the interface for scheduling the streams, but here we are. So it's Tuesday, it's September 24th, and it may be the day that Brexit died. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why I think that may be the case and what are the options and what are the scenarios that are going to happen from here on out. So, as always, you can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can follow me at Twitter at TFL1728, as well as you can support my work over at Patreon, or you can donate down below. You can do all the manner of things. There's links in the description down below to all of the things, including signing up for the Brave browser in order to be able to support your favorite content creators directly outside of Google. This is not a monetized channel. I don't have super chats installed. I don't have any monetization of any form or another, because frankly I just want to use Google as a bandwidth pig, and I think that that's a better way of getting them back for being evil. So if you want to install Brave, watch some ads, donate some crypto to your favorite content creators like me or the Duran and others who are signed up with Brave, and change the way you do browsing, change the dynamic, and take the money away from the people who are using that very money and your time and your eyeballs to enslave you. So I think that kind of sucks, and I think we should stop doing it. I think, this stopping engaging in behavior that sucks. It's kind of a good thing. All right, so let's talk about, speaking of behavior that sucks, let's talk about the British Constitutional Court, or the British Supreme Court, which is a very recent thing that was foisted on the Brits, from what I understand, by both Tony Blair and Lord Falconer. And I was discussing this with a couple of friends of mine who were legal experts over in Britain, just to make sure that I know what's going on. I just got finished watching the very excellent live stream just now from Alex and Alex over at the Duran, covering this very subject. But let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling this morning against the government for proroguing Parliament. No one other than hardcore Remainers believes that this is anything other than a completely political decision. There's just no question about this. It was obviously done to stop Brexit. I said last night on my live stream, after watching Nigel Farage yesterday and them discussing the way the arguments were going in court, this was the big thing that they were working from. The arguments in court were that government, if the government has the ability to prorogue Parliament for 3 days, it has the ability to prorogue Parliament for a year or 2 years or indefinitely, and that's fundamentally anti-democratic, and that's why you should strike this prorogation down, which is a dangerous argument. And Alexander Mercurus makes the very important point that going down that route with that argument means that now, if the government wants to go through the very normal process of proroguing Parliament every year, they have to get court approval. That the Supreme Court has now introduced itself as a mechanism into British law, and has fundamentally upset the constitutional balance within Britain. Now, you watch this channel and you read my work for any length of time, and you'll know that it's interesting watching Alex Mercurus sit there and not believe that they would go this far. Well, dude, what the hell do you think the fixed term parliaments actually was for? And what do you think creating a Supreme Court was for in the first place? It was always to head off at the pass any kind of legislative maneuvering that would come through government or parliament that went against the globalist neoliberal machine we here like to call the Davos crowd. This was always the point. You put these strictures and these structures in place in order to stop any kind of revolt. You stop the democratic revolt. Remember, Jean-Claude Juncker, outgoing head of the European Commission, famously said that, when things get tough, you have to lie. When the going gets tough, that's when you have to start lying. And that there can also be no democratic mandate against the European treaties. here we are 3.5 years after the Brexit vote, and we're still dealing with this. And now we're at the point of, and if you notice the whole process all the way down the line, the British constitutional system has been completely and utterly undermined at every step. First by Speaker Bercow, then by the British Supreme Court. And the goal here is to destroy the British political system, and that is something that I've been saying for a while, which is that I said at the beginning of the month, I said Brexit has now devolved into random acts of vandalism, and the idea being that if there's going to be any kind of meaningful Brexit, the price for this will be the soul of the soul of British democracy. It'll be for whatever that's worth, and for very small values of the British democracy. Every institutional safeguard and every institution itself will be undermined and will be trashed in the process of trying to stop Brexit. If you want Brexit, the price will be your political system. It's the same thing they're doing in Italy. It's the same thing that they did to Greece. It'll be the same thing they do here in the United States. They're already doing it here in the United States as well. This is the model for the future, and it's not going to change until these people are removed from power. Okay? And the only way for them to be removed from power is for all of their power to evaporate via, frankly, a massive sovereign debt crisis. And that's why we have the ECB, for example, going out there already discussing Mario Draghi himself, Mr. Austerity for thee, but not for me, talking about, mixed monetary theory, helicopter money, handing it directly to the people. People's QE. We have a people's vote in Britain. Now we get to have people's QE. Universal basic income is people's QE. Don't kid yourself. That's what this is all about. They know that the asset valuations cannot be maintained. They know that asset valuations after a no-deal Brexit will crash across the European continent in a way that no one is comfortable with. Then they will all lose all of their power. Major banks will fail. Major banks are already failing. The Fed repo window today was oversubscribed again today. Permanent open market operations will continue for 4 days, will continue every business day until October 10th. There's Treasury auctions all week this week in the United States. Over $200 billion worth of new issuance has to be absorbed. If those auctions tail in any way, meaning if there's not a whole lot of demand and they go off at rates that are higher than, and prices that are lower than, and rates that are higher than the when issued, that's going to signal to the market that we're reaching debt saturation and that we're reaching the end of this thing, the end of this phase of we don't need any more treasury debt. Now we need cash. We'll see what happens. I don't know that that's going to be happening, but don't kid yourself that these are things that are behind the decisions here that are happening politically in Britain. And the reason why the opposition to Brexit is so fierce, because it is. Okay, so in the process of opposing Brexit, they are now willing to tear up the British Constitution, such as it is, tear down everything, and at the same time, strip the British people of the illusion that they have any power whatsoever. This is an absolute full court press to destroy the will of the British people. Understand that. It's the same thing they're doing here in the United States. They're trying to strip us of our will. We elected Donald Trump. He's been frustrated to do anything even remotely like he was supposed to be able to do, and now they want to impeach him for Joe Biden's crimes. It's ludicrous to the extreme, and the naivete of listening to Alexander Mercouris, who I always thought was as much of a cynic as I was, to watch him go through and say, "Oh, I never thought they'd go this far." Like, Alex, of course they would go this far. It was always the plan to go this far. Because they always knew that at a certain level, the more the British people hardened around a leave position, and a hard leave position, the more the Brexit vote was betrayed, the more the people were lied to, the more desperate they would have to become, and the more authoritarian and vicious and vile they would be. Has anybody looked at Tony Blair lately? Does that guy not fucking begin to look like Emperor Palpatine with the arch? I mean, he looks like Tim Curry. He got a cross between Tim Curry as the bad guy from Legend and Emperor Palpatine. The guy's fucking evil, and he revels in it. Right down to Jory Miller's bad teeth from Ubik. It's terrible. Actually, he looks like a cross between... He actually looks more and more like Agent Smith every day, the more I think about it. From The Matrix. So, like that guy doesn't look like Agent Smith. It's crazy. But these people always morph into the as they age, they morph into the icons, the archetypes that they're based on, that the storytellers base their stories on. It's crazy. All right, so what's the scenario here? What does Johnson do from here? Now, Mercur's made some very salient points about fundamental political errors that he's made. And again, I think this shows that Alex is a little naive. Boris Johnson's not a lever. Boris Johnson is a guy who puts his finger in the political wind and decides which direction he needs to go. If Boris was serious about leaving with a no deal, which he's not, he never has been, so all this talk about, oh my God, he's going to take us out on a disastrous no deal Brexit, oh my God, and all this hyperventilating is all bullshit, because he was never intending to do that. Because if he was intending to do that, he would have taken Alex's advice and called for a general election back in July. But he didn't. He played these games, hemming and hawing, trying to work his wheel his way around, because what he's trying to do is he's trying to secure a form of Brexit that will make the Tories look good, destroy Labour, and keep Nigel Farage and the real populists in the background. That's what he's trying to do. He has completely failed on that point. Good, actually. While at the same time, for the most part, betraying Brexit by trying to push through a warmed-over version of Theresa May's deal. That's his strategy. And once you understand that that's what his strategy actually is, and not what you want it to be, Boris Johnson's actions make complete and perfect sense. Because he has many options. He's had many options down the line. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, Boris Johnson, Brexit hero or goat? Well, he's turning out to be a goat. And I've said multiple times, he's had every opportunity to oppose the Ben bill, didn't do it. He has the ability now to ignore the Supreme Court and to say, look, you've overstepped your bounds. You don't have any authority over me. No, I'm not going to do this. You guys can meet in Parliament all you want, but none of that business is going to go before the Queen. He has that right. Not going to do it. Why? Why is he not going to do it? Because he doesn't actually want to align the Tories with a radical Brexit position, any more than Jeremy Corbyn wants to align Labour with a radical Remain position. Because the goal is Brexit in name only, so that he can claim political success and achieve legislative victory. Understand? It's always been this way. This has been the fight from the beginning. This is the same strategy that Theresa May was running with. Can we fuck around and bamboozle the people and exasperate them just long enough so that the UK is permanently signed up for the EU defense treaties and all of that stuff? Because there is no air at this point between US foreign policy and British foreign policy, especially as it pertains to Russia, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the rest. Never forget that at a certain level, that the opposition to Brexit is absolutely an opposition to shifting British foreign policy away from an anti-Russian, pro-Israeli position. Period. It's always been that way. No one likes to talk about how deeply embedded the pro-Israel perspective is amongst the British elite, and how deeply held the anti-Russian position is in the British elite. Very important. Okay? Most, if not all, of the virulently anti-Russian stuff that has come out during the Trump administration, Trump has either been bamboozled with bad information or been given bad legislation to sign or executive orders to sign. And all of this stuff has all come from bad British intelligence. Remember, Russiagate was an MI6 operation done in conjunction with the Clinton administration, the Clinton campaign, and Ukraine in order to oust a sitting president of the United States. And that shit went through Boris Johnson's office when he was foreign minister. The Skripal poisoning, MH17, all that stuff. Never forget any of that, because that's the subtext here that we're not allowed to talk about. And no one sincerely does talk about, but we need to address it, because so many British Marxists, so little time. These are the people that need to be reined in. Remember, this is why they hated Margaret Thatcher. She was undoing 45 years of horrible, horrific British Marxism, of which Jeremy Corbyn is a classic example. Now, where are we? What do we do next? So remember that when we're talking about Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Why we're where we are. And why Nigel Farage was absolutely right that Boris Johnson was never going to take them out of the EU. Nigel said, I'm with Boris if he's willing to do the right thing. If he's not willing to do the right thing, he gets both fucking barrels, and I go on and I hit him like a house of cards. Boom. So where are we? I've asked this question 4 times and I haven't actually answered it yet. We are in the current situation. Johnson has the choice now to resign or not resign. The pressure on him to resign now is immense. He can't get any legislation past Parliament. He's been voted down by the Supreme Court. He's been forced to reconvene Parliament and all this stuff. He's ritual humiliation in every way, manner, shape, or form. He said so far that he's not going to resign, which is his only leverage he has left. Because remember, if the Remainers wanted a general election, they would have called for one. They're doing everything imaginable to avoid a general election, which is why they voted down his motions for a general election twice. Right? Oh, that's a terrible political maneuver. No, it's a terrible political trick. No, it's not. It's exactly what should be done under these circumstances. But that's all been thrown out the window. That's thrown out the window because that doesn't support Remain. So, Johnson doesn't resign. Corbyn tomorrow will most likely go for a vote of no confidence. And this, I agree with Alexander as Prime Minister, because this is what's got to happen. If the vote of no confidence goes through, it's not automatic that we're going to go to the Brits will go to a general election, right? Why? The Fixed Term Parliaments Act, put forth by Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, whoever the fuck put that thing through. Or whoever it was. Doesn't matter. Blair gave us the Supreme Court with the Fixed Term Parliament Act. I think it was also a Blair thing. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, does not matter. But the Fixed Term Parliament Act is absolutely, like the Supreme Court, something put in place to minimize the potential for a populist uprising. These systems and these changes that they've made, and they've empowered now the Supreme Court in unbelievable ways. The Supreme Court has arrogated so much power to itself. It's unbelievable. But these things could all shift when a populist government gets in charge, and then they've got to deal with that. And there won't be an easy way to out them. They're going to run into the same problem in Italy the next time there's a general election in Italy, because 1/3 of the seats are now proportionally are handed out first past the post. Well, I got news for you. Lega is going to win most of those seats now, not the Democrats. Or Salvini could sweep into office with a parliamentary majority with only 35% of the vote, 36% of the vote. Something to consider. So you got a similar problem here in that the Fixed Term Parliaments Act is meant to hold a parliament in place until the end of their term to keep a rogue prime minister and a rogue government from trying to do something drastic, like, I don't know, take the United Kingdom out of the European Union. Just saying. But it could also be that once you get a Brexiteer government in, and the Brexiteer government goes for something like Article 68, I think, or 62 of the Geneva Treaty, which just basically abrogates, defends the right of a country to unilaterally just walk away from a treaty, all treaties, with a particular party who's not acting in good faith, i.e. the EU, then at that point, the parliament will not be able to get rid of the government. That's the longer term plan. So right now, Johnson doesn't resign. This is only leverage he has to try and force a general election. Period. It's all he's got. Because he's given up everything else. I mean, he could do all these other things, but he's not going to do them because he's Boris Johnson and there's no known cure. At that point, once the vote of no confidence goes through, oh, by the way, and if they don't call for a vote of no confidence, all of this is nonsense. They're going to leave on October the 31st. Mark my words. Because the vote of no confidence is the only means by which they can get to their perceived strategy. And if you look at all the way the party conferences all went, it was very obvious. And certainly Labor's adopted position, which I'll explain in a minute, which is insane, but it makes a certain kind of sense once you realize what the ultimate goal is and what the order of operations is. The operation is first, vote of no confidence. Johnson is removed from power. Now, the Fixed Term Parliament Act says that they've got 14 days to put together some kind of government with the existing parliament. Similar to what just happened in Italy. Same thing's going to happen. The unthinkable is going to occur, and there's going to be a coalition of anti-Brexiteers to get together, and they're going to allow Jeremy Corbyn to become prime minister, who will then negotiate some shit-ass deal with the EU that won't matter because it'll just be Remain. And then they will immediately pass a resolution to have a second referendum, which has been Tony Blair's point, and he's been maneuvering everything towards for over a year now. Force a second referendum, which will be, and it will be in law this time. It will be legally binding and will bind any future government to its will. And those two options will be Corbyn's, whatever deal Labour comes up with, or Remain. There will be no Brexit option on the ballot paper. This will, one, frustrate the crap out of people. Most Brexiteers will stay home. They'll get whatever result that they want at that point. And then when the general election comes afterwards and Nigel Farage becomes friggin' prime minister, which would at that point would be very fucking likely, because the Tories will be destroyed. What are Brexiteers going to do? They're all going to vote for Farage. And he'll win a majority of seats. And he'll become prime minister. But he'll be bound by law to implement the results of the second referendum. That's their plan. That's the game plan. Right down the line. Labor's position is we will negotiate a new deal and then we will decide whether or not we're going to back that deal or Remain outright. We'll leave that to the party Congress and I'll stay neutral if I'm PM. That's their argument. And if anybody can't see how this plays out from here on out, you're out of your fucking minds. It's right there in front of you. This is what they're going to do now. This is their strategy. This is their game plan. And Boris Johnson's not doing a goddamn thing to stop it. And he has multiple ways in which he can stop this. He can ignore the Ben bill, which is now irrelevant. He can still ignore Parliament. Parliament says X, Y, and Z, and he can say, no, I'm not doing it. Because he doesn't want to not obey the law. Fuck you. Go obey the law. Make them put you in the Tower of London. Force that situation on them. But no, what will more likely happen is they have already figured this out. They're going to go for a vote of no confidence when he's moved in tomorrow. And remember, everybody up until yesterday morning, or everybody up until this morning, was thinking, well, this is not going to happen. It's still going to be complicated. No, they knew they were going to get what the Supreme Court was going to. They knew what the Supreme Court ruling was going to be. They knew it from the moment they submitted the fucking paperwork for the bill, for the lawsuit. They knew that they had the Scottish court in the bag. They knew the Supreme Court was in the bag. It was always fixed, guys. This was always a stitch up, as you Brits would put it. And anybody who couldn't see this coming is crazy. You're going to leave it to a fucking court? We Americans will tell you exactly how that works out. Oh, look, Obamacare is blatantly unconstitutional. This is obviously a tax. They point a gun to John Roberts' head and says, vote for this or we'll kill your family. Guess what? All of a sudden, it's not a tax. And he comes up with the most contorted legal ease imaginable that actually contradicts itself. If you read the opinion on Obamacare, the whole thing actually contradicts itself. And yet, the vote was registered. We have Obamacare. Got news for you. Same thing's going to happen with the Second Amendment if the Democrats were to win in 2020. So moreover, why was this court date set 2 days before the Tories had their party conference, but everybody else got to have their party conferences? Oh, I wonder why. Because there are no coincidences in politics, right? Pull the other leg. It plays fucking jingle bells. So you can see how this is all playing itself out. Brexit will be betrayed. Farage could become prime minister, but doesn't matter because who cares? And this is why it has to be a second referendum first, and then a general election. It's why they're putting off the general election as far as possible, because they know that if they betray Brexit entirely and they get the people on well, no, the people voted for this deal or remain, and this is what we got now. Let's remain. That's remain. You'll have two choices. We got both kinds, country and Western. Unbelievable. As they would put it, distinction without a difference. The whole purpose of democratic process in the 21st century is to give the people a false choice between a false binary. Always been this way, it will always be this way. And so the only thing left to the British people after a general election is a complete freaking overhaul of Parliament. Now, again, if Farage gets into power after a general election, I can tell you dollars to dog shit. That guy will go to negotiate with the EU after the withdrawal treaty. They will act in bad faith, because you know they will, and he will then he will go for the Geneva treaties, the Geneva Conventions on International Treaties. I know the hell he will. What's to stop Farage from tearing up the deal? It's a binding international treaty. That's what, all the marbles. It's not a withdrawal agreement. It's a binding international treaty. So then, the only thing they have at that point is unilaterally abrogating the treaty. Right, and if Farage is elected, he will be killed. I mean, I got to agree with you, Fun Fang. This is not even... This is the way things work. And they only need the 3 or 4 days they're going to take to get all this done. They know exactly what they're doing here, guys. This is nothing new. This is vandalism of the highest order. The truth of the matter is that none of it's going to matter in 2 years, because the European Union is going to collapse. Not within 2 years, but certainly within 10. Sovereignty. All the marbles. Come on, dude. We haven't had sovereignty in an awfully long time. We haven't had sovereignty in the United States since Lee surrendered at Appomattox, for fuck's sake. Let's not kid ourselves. And please, let's dispense with childish things such as sovereignty and community, culture, family, pride. These are all things that are incompatible with the 21st century. Don't you understand that? What are you, a provincial racist twat? What the hell's wrong with you? I know you know. I just have to say it. It makes me feel good when I do say it, dude. Come on. All right, so 28 minutes in, where are we? Let's see where we are. Stripping the power of the electorate is the serious element. That's what they're doing. That's what the process is. Because remember, the whole purpose of EU membership is to strip the people of any real democratic options. It's to strip them of their sovereignty, to strip them of their power. They don't have any power. The EU Commission has this power. The technocracy of the EU has all the power. We haven't had a revolution here because all the protests have been about participation in the decisions. That has changed, says Nickel. A general election which should sweep the stable, then we can take revenge, and revenge big time. Dude, I love your enthusiasm, but, we'll see. Yeah, so the democratic experiment came to an end under Blair and his cronies who created the Supreme Court, which I think I mentioned earlier. I agree with you, Fun Fang. It was for the purpose of undermining our system, and it's worked beautifully. They've had this in their back pocket the entire time. They knew exactly what they were doing. They packed the court with their people. Game, set, match. Should anybody be surprised by this? Scheckelberg says, this shows in my mind that the dictatorial arm of the despotic, corrupt EU is very long. It even reaches the British Supreme Court. which was created to do exactly what it did today. So it's not that long an arm. Enough of a reason to cut it off once and for all. Agreed. And I think a lot more Brits are going to realize just how bad it is. You got to remember that in order for a society to reform itself, and the Brits need a reformation, they have to hit rock bottom. And I don't know that they've hit rock bottom yet, but with every one of these moves, with every one of these insane machinations, where the most evil and openly evil and disgusting and unctuous people. I'm thinking specifically of Dominic Grieve, Oliver Wetman, Yvette Cooper, Keir Starmer, the rest of them, John Bercow. Oh, sorry, John Berkowitz. I'm sorry. Did I mention that that's part of the fucking problem here? Of course I didn't. Yeah, his real name's Berkowitz, for fuck's sake. All right. So here we are. And is anybody, but the more that these unctuous, disgusting, mendacious, venal people win, the more they're setting up an even worse reaction when they lose. And they don't understand that making it illegal doesn't make it right. And when you really and when you really screw with people's sense of fair play and justice, and they see the world for what it is, which is anarchy for me but tyranny for thee. When you see that, and now we have anarcho-tyranny has come to the British shores, and it's come to the British electorate's mind, into their psyche. They now have it viscerally in their bloodstream. The final outcome here is not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Same thing's going to happen in France. Macron may be strutting around like the cock on the walk today, thinking that he's got Merkel dead to rights, but he hasn't been outside. He hasn't truly been outside of Paris or Brussels in a long time. Funfang says, we move ever closer to a clean-baked Brexit or entirely cancelled. Trouble is, there are no politicians that will go for no deal. Farage wants out of political life ASAP. He's not going to stick around. I think he will stick around here. I think he has to. And I think he realizes now that this is not something you start and you kind of walk away from just to get something done. You do it. And if you're going to do this, you do it you have to do it and hold power in order to make it stick for as long as possible. Samed just says, Blair's long game has paid off. He set up the Supreme Court, which passed this ruling. It sets up a terrible precedent that we may not well have a government now if the court can rule against it. Oh, no, the court now can in every way undermine, they can use this as precedent to undermine the government's actions in every way now. That if Parliament doesn't like something the government does, all the Parliament has to do is complain to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will rule against the government, and the government's screwed. Oh, and the government can't resign. Nickel says, this is why we need to follow the Spanish and dig Marx's body up and flush his remains down the toilet. Fixed term Parliament came in under Cameron, yeah. Or is it? Doesn't matter. They both suck. They're both globalists. All right, let's see what we got recently. Dark Tuesday Times. Yeah, Switzerland is independent of the EU, manages much more successfully on their own than the EU does. The UK should do a clean-baked Brexit and follow a similar system that Switzerland has. Well, I agree with you, Sheckelberg. Just, convince that of the people who are going to lose everything. We'll love to see the Remainers' faces when Deutsche Bank collapses. Miss G, they understand that Deutsche Bank is going to collapse, and they want the Brits' money. They want to be able to suck the British middle class, what's left of it, dry to pay for it all. That's the point. All right, well, 35 minutes. Anybody got anything else you want to say? Because I think I've laid it out pretty clearly. I think it's pretty obvious. I may have done so with a number of requisite F-bombs, but are what they are. All right, guys. I'll be back on Friday, unless something even more crazy happens, like they try to impeach Trump on Thursday. All right, you guys take care. You be well. We'll talk soon. If you like what you heard today, please like, subscribe, share, do all the things. Bang the bell for notifications, all that stuff. If you're not doing that, you can't help me. So I understand. All right, we will talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.